Chapter 27. Constance stood on the ramparts. She leaned over the parapet, watching a young fox approach along the dusty road, bearing a stick with a white rag of truce tied to it. The big badger was uneasy. She knew this one, a fox from Old Sal's brood. You needed eyes in the back of your head to watch that lot. Stop right there and state your business, Fox, Constance said, called gruffly. Chickenhound sniggered, but seeing the badger's stern expression, he quickly took control of himself. I want to see your abbot, he called. The reply was abrupt. Well, you can't. The fox waved his flag, squinting up at Constance. But I must see the abbot. I come in peace. I have important information for sale. The badger was unmoving. I don't care if you've got the rumbling foxtrot. You aren't getting inside this abbey. If you want to speak to anyone, then speak to me. Constance watched the crestfallen fox, then added as an afterburst, and if you don't like it, well, you can sling your brush back up the road. Chickenhound was dismayed. That last insult had taken the wind completely out of his sails. He tried to think of how Sella would have handled the situation like this. Eventually, he unrolled the bark scroll and waved it up to Constance. This message is for the abbot's eyes only. It's important. The badger's eyes eyed him coolly. Then chuck it up here and I'll see that he gets it. No amount of wheedling and blandishment would cause the cynical badger to change her mind. She was adamant. In several puny attempts, each one weaker than the last, as the scroll fell back down to the road yet again, Constance called aloud, Put some energy into it, you little milksop. I'm not hanging about here all day. Chickenhound heaved the scroll with all his strength. He was gratified to see Constance lean out and catch it. Hopefully, he called, I'll wait here for an answer. The badger grunted uncommittally. She sat down below the parapet, out of the sight of the fox, scanning the message. Constance stayed there until a reasonable time elapsed, then stood up, panting heavily for effect. Tell Sheila that the abbot will see her in 2 days from tonight at 10 o'clock in Mossflower Wood. She must come to the old tree stump, and mind you tell her, no tricks. Chickenhound waved the flag. He went out into the bout of uncontrollable sniggering. Right, I've got the message, fat one. Be sure your abbot brings lots of valuables with him. Goodbye, old grayback. Constance poked an angry snout down at the insulting young fox. You better get running, frog-face. I'm coming down there to put my paw behind you right now. Again, Constance dropped behind the parapet. She hammered her paws loudly against the stones. Standing up, she watched a terrified chickenhound racing off down the road in a cloud of dust. Snotty-nosed little upstart, she muttered. There was no need for Father Abbot to concern himself with the underhandling dealers of traitor foxes. Constance would be able to deal with the situation herself. Matthias was famished. She sat down and took his lunch with Mr. and Mrs. Squirrel, the Bull family, and Silent Sam, Basil Stagg, the glorious hare. The young mouse ate mechanically. He did not really want conversation. This latest discovery of a new and baffling rhyme concerning moonlight, the north, and an unknown threshold nagged at his brain. Methuselah had gone out to seek the solitude of his Gatehouse study, where he claimed he could think more clearly. Matthias was not the liveliest of table companions. He smiled and nodded, paying little attention to the chatter of the voles and squirrels. He was not even distracted by Silent Sam, who sat upon his knee, stroking his whiskers with a sticky paw. Basil Staghare eyed the food which Matthias had hardly touched. Beg pardon, young mouse, old chap, but if you can't finish the blackberry muffin or that red currant tart. Matthias absently pushed his plate across his hair. Basil needed no second bidding. Abbot Mortimer entered. Seeing the look on Matthias's face, he leaned and murmured in his ear, All work and no play makes Matthias a very dull mouse. Cheer up, my son. What? Oh, I'm sorry, Father Abbot. I don't mean to be rude. I'm just trying to solve a problem, you see. The abbot patted Matthias indulgently. I understand, my son. Methuselah has told me of some of the difficulties facing you both. My advice is, don't let it get on top of you. Relax a little. Time provides all answers. You've done splendidly so far. Meanwhile, you must not forget your manners at table when guests are at our abbey. Matthias snapped out of his reverie. Silent Sam was admiring his sword belt. He laughed. Do you like that, Sam? It's the sword belt of a famous warrior. The little squirrel leapt up upon the table. He darted up and down, thrusting out his paws if he held a sword into it, stabbing away at thin air. He pointed at Matthias. The young mouse gave him a laugh. No, bless you, Sam. I haven't got a sword of my own yet, but I will have one some day. Silent Sam pointed at himself, cocking his head to one side. Matthias prodded his fat little stomach. A sword for you too, Sam? Well, I don't know about that. Your mom and dad might not want you going around armed to the teeth. Basil Staghair had the answer. He produced a beautifully made knife. It was very small and encased in a cunningly crafted bark sheath. The hare beckoned Sam. Come here, you dreadful little rogue. I've got the very thing for you. This is a leveret dagger. All young hares carry one. Here, let's try it on you for size, young buccaneer. What? Basil picked up a worn and discarded sandal. He untied the foot strap, threading the dagger and sheath along the strap. He fastened it around Sam's waist. There, by the left, you look like a regular little swashbuckler now, chuckled the kindly hare. Bounding up and down with delight, Sam cut a comical figure as he fenced his way along the tabletops, thrusting and parrying at cruets and candlesticks with his new sword, and sucking fiercely at his free paw. Matthias joined in the laughter as Mr. and Mrs. Squirrel thanked Basil for the generous gift to their tiny offspring. Forgetting his immediate problems, Matthias passed a happy hour in the company of his friends and woodlanders. He enjoyed it even more when Cornflower appeared. She shared Matthias's seat, glad to be off her feet for a while. Basil nudged Matthias. Excellent little filly, that girl. Do you know? She can produce more tuck in the twinkling of an eye than you could shake a stick at. You mark my word, young feller, my mouse. A body would be lucky to settle down with her. I say, have you noticed the way she looks at you? Hinds look at stags that way. Noble creatures, stags. It strikes me that you could just be just a stag for her. Why, I remember when I was only a young lacejack. Cornflower was making such faces that Matthias was about to silence Basil, when Methuselah popped in the door. He beckoned urgently to Matthias. Hastily the young mouse excused himself and left. Basil leaned closer to Cornflower. He smiled roguishly. You don't know I was a lacejack, did you, my dear? And those were the days of the old 47th Hare Border Rangers. That was the first time I'd ever clapped eyes on a stag. I say, I'm not boring you, am I? Nod's as good as a wink to an old bachelor Basil, you know. Methuselah was in a ferment of eagerness as he led his young friend over to the gatehouse. Matthias, I've found out where the threshold is. The ancient mouse refused to say more until they were safely inside his gatehouse study, with the door firmly shut. Even then he said nothing that made any real sense, shoving Matthias to one side as he devilled through old parchments and manuscripts, scattering books left and right. Where is it? I had it not 5 minutes ago. Hello, what's this? Oh, the treatise of Beefolk of Redwall? Methuselah hurled dusty volumes to one side, narrowly missing his companion. Wait a tick, I think I may have put it down over there. Matthias gazed in bewilderment as the overcrowded study. Books, scrolls, and manuscripts littered the small room. In his excitement, Methuselah opened a desk and practically disappeared under an avalanche of paperwork. Hey, steady it there, old mouse. What are you up to? Cried Matthias. Methuselah emerged jubilant, clutching a yellowed book. Eureka! This is it! Sister Germain's literature translation of Martin the Warrior's Abbey blueprints. He flicked swiftly through the dusty pages of the aged volume. Let's see. Gardens, cloisters, bell towers. Ah, here it is. The Great Wall and its gates. The old mouse winked at Matthias gleefully and adjusted his glasses. Listen to this. On the west wall will be situated a main gate so that the creatures may come and go, obtaining an entrance or an exit from the Redwall Abbey. This exit would be guarded both day and night from the main gatehouse, as such a very threshold of our abbey. The two mice hugged each other, then danced around amid the chaos of paper, chanting with joy. The gatehouse, the threshold, the gatehouse, the threshold. The abbot was passing by and heard the noise. He shook his head at Ambrose Spike, who was coming from the opposite direction. Mayhaps they've been at the October ale a little too much, Father Abbot, said the hedgehog. The abbot chuckled at the idea. Well, if it helps them on their mission of discovery, Ambrose, perhaps they ought to drink some more, eh? Aye, Ambrose agreed. 'Tis enough to inspire any creature. Good October ale. Perhaps it might inspire you one day to make me keeper of the cellar keys, Father. Inside the Gatehouse study, the two companions were once more at work, trying to break the code of the Great Hall rhyme. Well, there's another piece of the puzzle in place, said Methuselah, but we've jumped ahead of ourselves a bit. There are 4 lines before that to crack it. Look for the sword in moonlight streaming forth, at night when first hour reflects the north. Matthias interrupted. First 2 lines sound as if they could only be solved in darkness. Look for the sword in moonlight streaming forth. Agreed, replied Methuselah, but the next line of it is vital importance. It tells exactly when to look. At night when day's first hour. Matthias mused. Let's look at this logically. Go through it word by word. Slowly they repeated the line together. At night when day's first hour. Methuselah slumped in his armchair. I'm afraid it doesn't mean anything to me. Wait, cried Matthias. Midnight is the last hour of the old day. So by the same token, 1 o'clock in the morning is the first hour of the new day. But we still tend to class it as nighttime. It says in this rhyme, at night when day's first hour. I believe you are right, said the old mouse. Day's first hour is not when it becomes light. It's 1 in the morning, still dark. Matthias leaned wearily against a sack of old books. But if the gatehouse is the threshold, where are you supposed to stand anywhere in this hour after midnight? That's easy, grinned Methuselah. The rhyme says, from over the threshold seek and you will see. It's simple. What is above our heads right now? Matthias shrugged. The wall, I suppose? Methuselah bagged his paws down on the armchair. Exactly. And where is the only place you can stand on the wall but on the top of it? Suddenly it became clear to Matthias. Oh, I see, he cried. From over the threshold means we stand on the wall directly above the gatehouse. As fast as they could run, both mice hurried up the steps on the top of the wall. With Matthias in the lead, they pounded along the ramparts. Matthias stopped above the gatehouse and stamped his foot upon the stones. I'd say about here, would you agree? Methuselah looked a trifle doubtful. It looks a bit of a very rough approximation. Matthias had to concede. He looked sheepishly about. The stones which stood were no different from any other parts of the wall. The trail seemed to have gone cold again. Dejectedly, Matthias sat down on the heap of rock and rubble that had been here since the invasion. What are we supposed to do now? Hang about here until after midnight and wait for a miracle? The old gatehouse keeper raised an admonitory paw. Patience, young one, patience. Let us take stock and review the facts. Lend me your knife for a moment. Matthias drew Shadow's dagger from his belt and gave it to his friend. He watched the old mouse begin riding in the dust from the rubble. Item 1. Martin is Matthias. Item 2. We have found Martin's tomb. Item 3. We have also found his shield and sword belt. Item 4. Our task is to find Martin's sword. Item 5. Where? From here, the top of the gatehouse wall. Item 6. When? At 1 in the morning when moonlight streams forth. Item 7. In which direction? To the north. They sat in silence, digesting the facts on the list. Then Matthias spoke. Suppose we look to the north. Both mice turned their heads northwards. Well, what do you see, young one? Queried Methuselah. Matthias's voice was tinged with disappointment. Only the abbey, part of the beehives, north side of this wall, and the tree top beyond. What do you see? What do your eyes see, old one? Exactly the same as yours do. They're perhaps a little bit dimmer. Don't give us up, though. Let us keep looking. Maybe we'll see something. The surveillance continued. Apart from retrieving his dagger, Matthias sat very still, peering northwards. Eventually he had to give up. His eyes were beginning to water, and he felt he was getting a crick in his neck. Methuselah had fallen asleep in the afternoon sun. Angrily, Matthias stabbed his dagger point deep into the edge of the rubble. I told you it was a waste of time. Couldn't you stay awake for another 5 minutes? Must you go to sleep on me? The old mouse awoke with a start. What's that? Oh, Matthias, there you are. Dear me, I must have dropped off for a moment. Sorry, it won't happen again." Matthias was not listening. He was digging into the rubble with his dagger. Methuselah watched him curiously. "What in the name of goodness are you up to now?" The rubble scattered as Matthias dug away madly. "I think I've found what we're after. It's some sort of shape in the stone down there. Trouble is, there's too much rubbish on the top of it. I think we need Formal's help again." Formal and his team arrived panting. With Matthias running ahead, the moles collapsed on the rubble, breathing hard. "You're gotten bitty short legs, us is moldoos. I'll take it if you generalize needing our help again." This time Matthias understood. "Yes, please, Mr. Formal. Do you think that you and your team could possibly move this pile of rock and rubble? There's something we need to get at underneath it all." Formal spread his stubby paws wide. He smiled winningly. No soon as said and done, young one. Where are you looking to shifted it to?" Matthias shrugged. "Oh, anywhere, I suppose, as long as it's not in our way." Formal spat on his paws and rubbed them together. "All right, mateys. Best in dumping this lot where it comes from." The two mice had to jump aside smartly as the mole team took over. There was much hurrying and erring. They waited busily and bulldozing the enormous heaps of rock and rubble off the top of the ramparts. It tipped downwards into an earthly shower, back into the trench and the abbey grounds whence it had come from. Matthias watched admiringly. "What splendid workers these moles are, Methuselah." At the hill, dwindling, his friend agreed. Indeed, they are. Their skills and knowledge are passed on through families, you know. Earth, rock, shell, or root, they can handle it all. Do you know, it was the moles who dug the foundation for this very abbey? Formal can claim direct descendant from the mole who was in charge of the operation. In fact, it was Martin who bestowed the title Formal upon his ancestor. As the mice conversed, the moles hurled the last of the rubble from the rampart. It was set about brushing the stones clean. Formal tugged his nose and saluted. We dumb now, sirs. I bid ye a good day." 10 seconds later they were all gone. "Moles aren't too fond of heights," observed Methuselah. "Right, let's see what they've uncovered." It was a circle cut into the stone. On one side it was cut shallow, while on the opposite side it was carved deeply. The center was domed, with 2 slots graven into either slope. At the apex of the dome there was a letter M. Beneath it was carved 13 small circles, each with a smiling face upon it. Constance came rambling along the wall, checking on the road beneath. "Hello there, you two. Are you staying up here all day? You'll miss afternoon tea if you don't hurry. There'll be precious little left after the 3 squirrels, 3 voles, and basil-stack hare as guests." Studying the carving, Matthias waved absently at the badger. "You carry on, Constance. We'll be down shortly." The badger's natural curiosity was aroused. She came and stood between the 2 mice. After a curtsy lunch, she threw up her paws in mock despair. "Oh, no, not more puzzles and riddles." Methuselah gave her a stern stare over the top of his glasses. "My dear Constance, kindly do not pour scorn on things you know nothing of. Leave it to those who specialize in knowledge." Turning to Matthias, the old mouse continued. "Yes, most interesting. These 13 small circles with smiling faces, what do you make of them?" Matthias could not shake his head. He could not think what circles might mean. Constance interrupted. "What do you mean, those things? They're obviously the 13 full moons of the year." Methuselah was distractedly piqued. "How did you know that? Explain yourself." Constance scoffed. Any badger worth salt knows all about moon. Do you want me to recite all its phases? I can, you know." Matthias was suddenly back on track. He counted all along the moon, stopping on the 6th one. "That one will be this month, June, when it's full moon, due in June, Constance." "It's tomorrow night," came the prompternate reply. "Why, it's something supposed to happen then. Some magic or miracle." Methuselah ignored the badger's attempt to levity. "If we can stand up here at 1 o'clock in the morning on the night of the full moon, we may be able to find the sword of Martin the warrior," she said rather sternly. Constance scratched her muzzle. "How are you going to manage that?" Matthias ran his foot around the edge of the circle. "We're not quite sure yet, but we are trying to figure it out. You see, it's all linked closely, with the rhyme from the wall of the great hall. Martin's tomb, the stuff we found in it, the sword belt, a shield, and a rhyme on the back of the Constance interrupted. What type of shield? Oh, pretty much a standard kind used by the warriors, Matthias replied. A round steel affair with a hand and arm holds. The badger nodded knowingly and continued where Matthias had left off. Yes, I've seen those sort of things before. Not too much to look at, in fact. Just a type of shield would be fit precisely into that circle. Can't you see the slots for the arm holds? But then again, if you look at this carved circle, you notice that there's cut so the shield would tilt, probably to reflect the moonlight. Both mice stared at the badger. They were in awe and respect written upon their faces. Matthias shook his paw with great ceremony. Constance, wonderful badger, old friend, don't worry about afternoon tea. You just sit yourself right here, because I, personally, am going to bring you the largest, most delicious tea that has ever been served within the walls of the Abbey. The warm Ritzton ramparts rang to the echoes of the three friends' delighted laughter.